Yes, the next agency to present is Agency 157-157. Counselor Itzen is made his way from Casper. He's the district attorney for Judicial District Number 7.
Welcome. What a beautiful picture. Just the floor is yours.
My name is Dan Henson. I'm the district attorney, excuse me, out in Natrona County. With me is my office manager, Michelle Hollister. I think our budget is fairly straightforward. It's about the same request that we had asked for in the supplemental budget and dealing with those 3 positions. Kind of to give this committee a background of what has happened since the supplemental budget and us not getting those 3 positions. We had 4 attorneys start looking for other jobs. 3 of them ultimately did leave, 1 stayed. And a lot of that is, frankly, the caseload that we handle. The nice thing with being, I don't want to say old, but I've been in the office 25 years now. And in 25 years, you gain a lot of historical knowledge of that office. We have not had a personnel increase in that office since 2004. In that time frame since 2004 forward, our judiciary district court bench has doubled in size. We went from 2 district court judges to 4 district court judges. We have 7 courtrooms that we have to manage and be in at any given time. And we do that with 9 attorneys. So if anybody's sick or someone's in trial or a combination of those 2 things, we're extremely scrambling. And I'm sure as the other attorneys will talk about here in a moment, is the complexity of cases over the last 25 years has changed. A simple DUI in 2000 may have been 1 officer, but remember, you didn't have body cams or dash cams, and you had a handwritten report and some test results. That was pretty much a DUI in the state of Wyoming at about 99 to 2000. Today, we're much more evolved. You have body cams, you have dash cams, you have cage cams. You have 2 or 3 officers that have all that equipment on them as well. And it becomes the responsibility of the prosecutor's office to marshal that evidence and then send it off to a defense attorney. While that doesn't necessarily, in a single case, sound all that bad, it never ever works that smooth. Inevitably, somebody didn't use their body cam or had somebody else's body cam. So you're always kind of running down those loose ends. And we're doing that with the same staff that essentially we were at 2000 levels. And then we kind of talk a little bit about our numbers overall. We average right around 3,000 misdemeanors a year. We do that with 3 attorneys. That's a substantial load. Our felonies historically fluctuate between, say, 360 and 400 felonies a year. We do that with 4 attorneys. Felonies are a substantial time commitment, any level of those. I went and looked at the numbers on the Wyoming Supreme Court website just for cases filed from 23 to 24. And our misdemeanors saw an increase of 12%. Our felony level rose by 7%. Also, what is put on the felony side of things, we deal with expungements now. We deal with people wanting to get off the sex offender registry. We deal with folks that don't want interlock devices. A lot of different things that folks may not necessarily think, oh, that's what the prosecutor does. We do that in addition to what everyone thinks a prosecutor does. We've started, several different courts to try to help people. We got an adult diversion program that Justice Finn wanted to try to get some folks lagging in jail and not getting to the state hospital and trying to get them some help. We have a drug court program. We have a student court program where basically we take at-risk kids, both criminally speaking and academically speaking, and it's ran much like a drug court. And we try to get these folks two things. You complete the program, we don't file the charges, or if they're filed, we expunge those. And two, try to get them on track academically so they'll have a high school diploma. So when they leave, at least they're on fair footing. But what those specialty courts do is takes time away from one of the 9 prosecutors. So in essence, I have one prosecutor that handles those, but can't handle a full-time caseload on top of that. So we kind of have to balance those things out. The trends that I have seen, frankly, we're seeing violent crime on the rise, but among the youth, if you will, in Natrona County. We've had a series of horrific murders. I'm sure everyone's kind of read about those. But those seem to be on the rise exponentially across our community. And those cases in and themselves take quite a bit of time. There's a great deal of motion practice that goes into those. And, kind of not simply one hearing or 2 hearings, but there's a number of different hearings that we follow across the state. In the May of 24, the district court judges kind of changed how discovery motions would be done within Natrona County. Prior to that, your discovery cutoff date was 10 days prior to trial. While we gave it out earlier than that, that gave us a chance to, if you're meeting with someone, they said, hey, do you have that photograph? Oh, no, I got to get that to the defense. That has changed. All discoveries due within 30 days of the case being put into district court. Motions are due within 30 days. That brings me to example A. Example A is what we refer to as a trial stack. So for October 6th of this year, that would be every felony case that's currently docketed for a jury trial in Natrona County. The far left column indicates the date, who the judge is, and the anticipated length of the trial. The next column over is the docketing number. The third column would be who the defendant is. Fourth column is a potential arraignment dates. And then the last column is the attorneys who are assigned that case, both defending and prosecuting. The issue with going through that discovery, as we talked about, if you look at the November 3rd column, for example, we have one prosecutor that has to be prepared on 6 different cases. And while that doesn't seem like a lot, it is when you give them some time and go, holy cow, you gotta make sure your discovery's there. You gotta make sure your motions are there. And time simply doesn't stop for these guys. They get assigned cases daily. As a result, the question is how do we keep up? And the truth is, it's a little bit of bubble gum and duct tape, so to speak. But I have folks that work way after 5. I got folks that come in on the weekends. But at some point, your burnout rate just gets tremendous, and that's why, in part, you see attorneys start looking for other lines of employment so they don't have to deal with being ready to try 5 cases all at once, and then come to find out the top one's going. So that's kind of what we have currently facing within Natrona County a little bit. To that end, I asked for 2 new attorneys at step 3, excuse me, and then 1 legal support staff to manage those attorneys. What we've discovered, across the state, we've gone to electronic filing, e-filing. And everyone, I think, thinks technology is great, but getting this off the ground is anything but great. What it does is, for example, in a juvenile case, you may have an order or 2 for every hearing that case goes through. You have to prepare that order, then you have to submit that order to 3 different attorneys, get their approval, then upload that into the system over at the courthouse. Imagine doing that when you got 70 files. Mr. Chairman, sorry.
Sorry to interrupt. Let me just hit a couple questions. So number one, I fully understand your situation. So tell me, if this committee fully funds you, what does the picture look like then for you?
I would like to put 2 attorneys in my felony position, limit that caseload of, 100 or so, and break that out so we can manage our cases.
Okay. And is that going to relieve some of the stresses of your office and what you've been going through? Tell me what that looks like.
Yes, sir. I think it does. I think what that looks like is all of a sudden a caseload of 37 felonies for 4 different attorneys. Maybe we can cut that down to a manageable caseload of 15 to 20.
Okay.
We can start to look at cases a lot quicker on the front end of things. Okay. We can then maybe start to deal with the deadlines imposed by the judges in more of an in-depth review.
So if if we were to approve your request, are you coming back in a year on the supplemental, or will this carry you through for it?
Mr. Chairman, no, I would be extremely happy.
Okay. And then my last question is for those in the public who are viewing this, what is your total request then for the biennium?
My total request? With the new positions, if you could just give me a moment.
Yeah. You got a lifeline.
Nope, I needed that. Basically $6.6 million, sir.
6.6.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any questions? Yes, Representative Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we would give you the 3 people you need, do you have office to house them now? Or are you going to be coming back wanting more buildings and more staff? Or do you have what you need to house them?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Alleman, we do have the office space to house those. And when the district attorneys were set up back in, I believe, 1983, housing and those type of things by statute became a county issue. So the county of Natrona provides us our housing.
Okay.
Yes, follow up, please.
Follow up, thank you, sir. This is a different question, but do you feel in the courtroom and in your offices, are you safe? Are the victims safe? Is the judge safe? Is everybody safe with the law enforcement that you have in your buildings?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Alleman, that's a tough question. I don't know quite how to, I can't give you a straight up yes or no answer. I can tell you there are a number of female attorneys that we've discussed that don't feel safe walking across the street because they've been approached, and I don't know if it was malicious in nature or if it was just an over-exuberant, friendly individual, but we've talked about some of that.
Follow-up, sir?
Please.
Thank you. Has there been any incidents happen where it would actually give anybody a real reason, a real true reason not to be safe? And if they weren't safe, was there prosecution against the people who made them feel unsafe?
Mr. Chairman. Representative Alamand, fear, I think, is very subjective. What scares me may not scare you. You know, if you're a 23-year-old female attorney walking from court at night and someone screams at you, you might be scared. Is that prosecutable? The answer is no. I don't think the law allows for something in that nature. I think our Sheriff's Department does a tremendous job with respect to security. Sheriff Harlan and I kind of grew up together through our jobs. And when we do recognize issues, I'm able to go to the sheriff and speak with him and go, I think this may be an issue. Can you help? And the answer has always been yes. You know, we'll put extra deputies in the courtroom in plain clothes. Yep, you know, if you got an issue, we'll have somebody outside just hanging out until your staff goes home for the evening, those type of things. So, yeah, we're safe, and I think it's that cooperation that does it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Other questions? Yes, Representative Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just curious on your secret of not getting burned out yourself and staying as long as you have.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Smith, in third grade, I wrote an essay, as much as a third grader writes an essay. My mom mailed it to me when I took this job. It was basically, what do you want to do in your life? Well, I wanted to have a wife, a child, a sports car, and 2 dogs, and protect people. Now, I couldn't spell all those words, but I got it framed in my house. And I have a wife, 2 dogs, a '66 Mustang, and I love my job. There are days you go home pulling your hair out, but I look at my third grade essay and go, that's it. So for me, that's the answer I got for you.
Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are you nervous now? We had a conversation outside.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Pendergraft, I was talking with Representative Pendergraft, and I said, you know, I've done a lot of things, but I'm always extremely nervous when I come here. And it's not because no one treats me bad. It's a very foreign setting to me. And I think prosecutors, and boy, I hope no one ever repeats this, but are kind of control freaks, right? In the courtroom, we got it going on. You know, we got photos and we got this, we're calling that witness. Here, I don't have any of that. So it kind of spooks me.
Yes, please. Yes, okay.
Thank you for that. It would be a bit of a shock to, you know, people don't stand up for you when you come in here. The question that I have is, if you get yourself really in a bind and you're up against deadlines to be able to get things going, do you have the option, and I did look through your 900s, do you have the option of contracting help? Can you hire an attorney to come in and help in a situation?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Pendergraft, our 900 series is, we call it our expert budget. So for example, if we need a pathologist in a murder trial, that budget's only $25,000 a year. A pathologist to come testify is about 10 grand. So no, sir, I don't have extra money there to go do that. If there's an accident reconstructionist or those type of things, that's kind of where that money comes from.
Other questions? Yeah, please do.
Thank you. Follow up. So let's just say, for argument's sake, if there was a couple of $100,000 in there and you had a particular case, is that an option to you? I just, even legally, are you able to contract to hire an attorney to help you through a jam? I guess is basically the question.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Pendergraft, I don't think, it would have to be a very special bind, I think. I think Laramie County probably saw that in the last administration here, where they were down to, I don't remember, 2 or 3 prosecutors in the office. That would be the kind of issue I think one would have to envision to do that, sir. And to get back to that kind of control thing, it'd have to be the right person. You just can't get somebody off the street. So that's my answer, I suppose.
Other questions? Well, you don't need to be.
I
You don't
appreciate
need to
that,
be.
sir.
So, anything else? Anything else? Anything else you'd like to add?
No, sir, I appreciate everybody's time and questions. Thank you.
Senator, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm going to bring up the jury issue again, because I just wondered, do you have troubles funding your jury trials? And it's probably not your responsibility maybe, but does it ever weigh on your mind on if you're going to proceed that way?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Larson, the county picks up the jury tab, so to speak. I've never heard from our commissioners of, hey, you're trying too many cases or you need to do things. I don't think, to be honest, my answer would be no. You know, I took an oath to do justice, and dismissing cases or not pursuing them, to me, would not be justice. So in my head, that never enters into it.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I
Thanks.
appreciate your time.
Who do we have next? I think.
District Attorney from Laramie.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, that is Agency 151.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Good to have you here.
Chairman Salazar, members of the committee. My name is Sylvia Hackle. I am the district attorney for here in Laramie County. I began my tenure in January of 2023. So I don't have the length of time in my position as Mr. Itzen has, but my career, which I hesitate to say spans 45 years. Of course, I started practicing law when I was 10, but okay, I'll admit, 20 maybe? Anyway, I spent most of my career in criminal law as a public defender in the Attorney General's office, Board of Equalization. That wasn't criminal law, but, and I ran for office in 2022 because the district attorney's office in this district was in terrible, terrible trouble. And those troubles were addressed thanks to the legislature in the 2024 session. Mr. Itzen referenced the fact that my office was at half strength, missing half of its attorneys. People had left, burned out, been fired. It was in shambles. I am pleased to report that as of not quite a year ago, last winter, we were fully staffed. In for the first time in 6 years. And I would very much like to keep it that way. I provided as an Exhibit 2102, a budget overview to you, which looks a lot like a little memo. And it's got, I believe, all the relevant statistics for my office, including the fact that we actually have 11 attorneys. And so you can read that, but we have, to my right is my deputy district attorney, Mr. Bill Edelman. He primarily handles homicides, but is also available not only to consult on every case, but to step in as necessary. He is truly my right-hand man, and he brings a wealth of experience to the office, including a decade as a district court judge in Johnson County. To my left is Barb Wallace. She is from the accounting office. She is a principal accountant, and she's the person who helps me count numbers. And everyone needs one of those. So our staff, I'm not asking for any additional staff. We got one attorney 2 years ago, but I'd sure like to keep the staff I have now. I'd like to briefly look at our caseload, as Mr. Itzen did, look at our budget, and if this presentation goes as smoothly as Mr. Itzen's, I believe we can keep you on schedule, if not ahead of schedule, and I know you would appreciate that. Our caseload, well, first of all, I could say to Mr. Itzen's testimony, ditto. Our caseloads are very similar, our budgets are very similar. He has a couple fewer staff, though he wants more, and I think he's well justified. And he talked about what we're seeing. The kinds of cases that are coming in the door, not only are they steady, but they're more serious. And for example, the number of sexual assaults we dealt with from January of 25 to October, compared to the same time period in 24, was up over 36%. Now that number in total wasn't huge. It went from, it went up to like 36 from 25. And as a percentage of our caseload, it went from 1% to 2%. So we're not talking huge numbers, but that's a lot of sexual assaults. When we have domestic violence cases now, not that there's ever an easy domestic violence, but they used to be pushing, shouting, shoving. Now strangulation seems to be the approach of choice.
Why do you think that is? Why do you see this deteriorating?
I wish I knew. I'm not a sociologist, but I agree with Mr. Itzen that we see a lot more violent crime in our youth, and I believe it's generational. I can tell you that there is an individual that I represented when I was a young public defender in the early 80s, and we are now representing his grandchildren. So it's generational and societal. And I get letters all the time from people who say, what are you going to do about drunk driving? What are you going to do about juveniles with guns? If I had the answer to that, I would probably be, I'm not sure what I'd be doing, but I'm not sure I would be living in, I'd live in Wyoming, but I think I'd, be accepting the Nobel Peace Prize. So but I think it's societal and generational. I really do. And for example, this morning, as I was driving through McDonald's to get my breakfast, I could hear somebody shouting as I drove through the drive-through, and pardon my language, but a male voice angrily repeating time after time, "Shut up, bitch." Clearly very angry. And I thought, well, should I try to, there are some housing and apartments behind that particular McDonald's. And I thought, should I try to drive up and down the street and pinpoint the source of that anger and then turn it in? Is it in the parking lot? Because it was identical and repeated. And I thought, or is it a recording? What am I hearing? And I did look around. I didn't see anything, and I did not feel that I was the appropriate person to go knocking on doors. I didn't wish to get, harmed myself. But that's the sort of thing, you hear early in the morning and you think, somebody several somebodies are not having a good day. So if I come up with any answers, Senator, I'll be happy to share them with you. I mean, my staff and I are all very dedicated to what we do. And just like Mr. Itzen said, I didn't write an essay in third grade, by the way, on this, but my job is challenging, involving, and maybe it seems weird to say you love what you do when what you deal with is crime every day, but I can't imagine what else I would be doing right now. Several people have suggested retirement, but I don't knit. So, this is, well, I don't, and I wouldn't be any good at it. So, this is what I do with the help of an extraordinary staff. Our caseload has remained steady. We've had 10 homicides this year so far, including, and we tried one that you may have heard about. It was a murder that occurred 10 years ago in the coin shop in Cheyenne, and they did not locate the defendant for 8 years. And to this day, he maintains his innocence, but a jury of 12 convicted him of 2 counts of first-degree murder. So he is now serving 2 life sentences. But we have homicides involving youth. We have a shooting that occurred a couple of weeks ago that we haven't charged yet, but it involves a youth-on-youth homicide. Very, very disturbing. I gave you some statistics week at a glance for last week. We got 106 new cases in the door. That's on top of what we already had. I can tell you yesterday we got 40 alone. Now, part of that's because it was a 4-day weekend and the courts weren't open on Friday. But by the end of this week, we'll get 75 or 80 new cases, at least, if not more. So just like Mr. Itzen said, they roll in. It's like sitting at the beach. And here come the waves.
So I should have asked Mr. Itzen this too. Are you seeing an increase or a decrease on child abuse?
I would say an increase. And also what we're seeing is it's not that there's ever not an egregious child abuse. I don't know how to phrase that, but we have not 1, but 2 cases that involve parents basically starving their preteens, trying to starve them to death with kids who ended up in children's hospital down in Denver. We have one case involving a set of twins where one ends up dead and the autopsy's still not complete. The other twin seems fine. It just, as a parent myself, I'm clueless as to how people can do these things, but they do.
And you would tell you would inform the legislature if you didn't have all the tools to prosecute that.
Absolutely. That's why I'm pleased to come to you. Like I said, we work hard. There's nobody in my office who doesn't come in on time and stay late and work to their capacity. But at least we're not gasping for air. And this budget and this staffing will keep it that way. I would like to point out to this body that our standard budget, which is, and this is just the standard budget, of $6,582,000 and change, is essentially flat since the previous appropriation of $65,22,891. So that's an increase of $59,251 for the standard budget, which is, yes, it's money. I'm never going to tell this body in particular that it's, de minimis, but it's essentially flat. And so I feel very confident in asking for it that is adequate to fund our agency and that it's essential. We are 92.5% personnel. The other 7.5% is for like our case management database, our legal research services, our phones, things like that. We don't have a lot of travel. Most of the training we do, we try to find things like the law enforcement. Annually, there's law enforcement training. We go to that. So we have a flat budget. Very quickly, my exception requests, they're in order at the bottom of Exhibit 21-02, we have two situations where we have a federal grant, federal grants, plural. One funds our high-intensity drug task area attorney and support staff. But the way the federal grant works, they don't fund, they calculate benefits a different way than the state does. You know, you have a salary of X amount, and then the state says, and your benefits will include Y amount. Well, the federal government does it differently, and it causes a shortfall. Plus, our grant was down about $2,800. So that's what, when it says a funding swap, I find swap I think it's a term of art among the accounting people, because it's not necessarily a term that resonates with me. Be that as it may, that's the amount of money that will enable us to match the benefits, make up the shortfall in the original grant, and keep our full-time attorney and full-time legal assistant spending 100% of their time prosecuting drug crimes. And I probably should have brought you a picture of the files. There's a lot of them. Priority 2 actually comes to you through ETS, and my understanding is you'll be hearing from them later in the presentations. It's for the standard equipment replacement, and then also 2 of our operating systems, Microsoft 365 and Adobe, and they're switching from an annual, here's what it costs you to have this for a year, to a monthly subscription fee, kind of like Netflix. And so if we want to keep our operating systems, we now have to pay on a monthly basis. So that's that $109,000, most of which, though, is to keep our computers and our equipment up to date. You will see one thing in that computer list that I want to alert you to. You'll see that there are some, I'm going to call them high-powered computers, because that's another thing I'm not, as an IT person. But they're more expansive and expensive computers for our legal assistants, because they're the ones who have to download the body cams, the dash cams, all that video footage that comes in from law enforcement in every case now. And their computers have to have much more storage and the ability to download those files and then send them on to defense counsel, as is our constitutional requirement. So they have fancier computers. That's really all that amounts to. Originally, we had a little question about that from ETS saying, well, you don't crunch data like, say, the highway department does. No, it's true. We're not building roads, but we are building cases to prosecute. And it's those files, which are voluminous. If you've ever downloaded a video on your phone, then you know whereof I speak. Priority 3, we have another grant funding situation where we get our VOCA grants through the Attorney General's office. And during COVID, we have a 20% match. And during COVID, that was set aside. I'm not sure why it wasn't required during COVID, but it wasn't. And now it is. So we simply have to meet that obligation. Everything else in our budget is what you would expect. Personnel, the support costs for personnel, telecommunications, and that sort of thing. I am more than happy to answer any of your questions to the very best of my ability. And if I can't answer it, I have folks sitting on either side of me who can.
Any questions for the committee? Any questions? Nothing. See what a great job you did?
Well, thank you. Either that or I bored you to death, but I hope that was not the case. I could always spontaneously burst into song. I've been known to do that. Well, if there is nothing else, I do appreciate your time and attention and your consideration. And Representative Pendergraft, I understand you will be carrying this budget, so if there are any of those little detailed questions that wake you up in the middle of the night and you say, I need to know, you can call me, although, you know, maybe not in the middle of the night. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Appreciate
your
it.
time.
Yes, Mr. Richards.
Mr. Chairman, given the time, maybe a 10-minute break?
Yes,
if
I
you
was
would.
just about to do that. Yes, we'll take a break for 10 minutes. Thanks. And who do we have next? Hello, how are you?
Hello, Chairman Fowler. I'm Loretta Hallis. I am the Uinta County Prosecuting Attorney,
Oh.
but I am also the president of the Wyoming County and Prosecuting Attorneys Association.
Good to have you here.
Yes, I am here to present for Budget 160 today.
Please go forward.
I wanted to just address first some of the differences. I think most people understand some of these differences, but you just heard, actually, Dan and I have gone to middle school and high school together. I've known him most of my life. And Ms. Hackle was the public defender when I was in law school, so I've known both of them for well over 25 years. I respect them very much. What you should know is that there are 9 judicial districts in the state of Wyoming. You only have 2 district attorneys. The other 21 counties are addressed through county and prosecuting attorneys. And so, for example, if you had 7 other district attorneys, you can imagine exponentially the cost that would come to the state of Wyoming. But unfortunately, I can't even agree on the white paper fully that was submitted to you that that would be $6.5 million. Because, for example, in my district, the 3rd Judicial District, we have Lincoln County, Uinta County, and Sweetwater County. The Sweetwater County Attorney's Office has 9 attorneys. My office is authorized to have 4. We recently got up to 3. And the Lincoln County Attorney's Office has 5. And so those offices would then have to be combined with 1 district attorney and then flowing down into management for those 3 other offices. So I believe that it would be fair for you to assess that it would actually be closer to probably $8.5 million, at least for our district. That would be a similar circumstance for in Gillette. Gillette has, I believe they're up to 3 district court judges and 4 circuit court, and they cover Weston and Crook County as well. And so that would be a similar principle. And the reason that we have the process and procedure that we do is because of the fact that that also would lose voice. In my district, obviously Uinta County would have very little choice in the elected district attorney, because our population compared to Sweetwater County is certainly less. And then obviously poor Lincoln County, which is about 2/3 of our population, would probably likely never have an elected district attorney. And so what you, the legislature, have done is have created a circumstance where whenever it refers to a district attorney in your statutes in those other 21 counties, you are referring to me. When the other 21 county attorneys that are elected. In those 2 counties where there's a district attorney, the county attorney is appointed by their Board of County Commissioners. And so in relation to matters, the legislature in 183107 has provided for funding for a portion of our salaries, because a portion of the duties that I have certainly represent Uinta County and the elected officials. But the large amount of duty, in fact, I would tell you that it's probably close to 90% of our office's function, is to enforce state statute in the same way that your district attorneys do. And so in relation to these proceedings then, there is a funding that has been provided in your standard budget of $6,296,655, and that's been in the primary budget that was approved. And you should note that that's 21 elected county attorneys, and pursuant to statute, they have provided that you are providing $50,000 towards our salary. My personal salary is one of the lower salaries in the state. I am not putting any shame on my commissioners. I'm very fond of them. But my salary, for example, is $115,000. So that does not cover 50% of my salary. A number of the county attorneys across the state are at $145,000, so that would cover approximately 1/3 of those district attorneys' salaries. I think it's important for you all to know that. And so for the 2-year biennium for the 21 elected officials is $2,100,000. In addition to that, then, you all likely have seen most years Joe Barron, who is the Crook County attorney. He's been here doing this for about 30 years for you guys, and he is retiring, but it is an average that he is asking for 78 assistant county attorneys, and that is because our offices vacillate. As I've noted, my commissioners have approved me to have 3 deputies. I have not been able to hire 3 deputies. Those positions have been open for a substantial period of time. And we So sometimes we have them filled, sometimes we don't, and that's consistent amongst the counties. And so the average over that time frame is 78 assistant county attorneys over those 23 counties, providing for $4,680,000. So you will note that the total request for the budget includes an exception request of just under $500,000 for a total request for budget 160 of $6,780,000. And so at least for this budget request, that would be where I would address issues. That provides for those 78 county attorneys, you all pay $30,000 for each of those attorneys per year. So for example, one of my deputies is at $93,000, so you pay approximately a little less than a third for him, and the other is at $82,000, so a little bit less than half for him. I'm sure you guys will have questions. I was making notes. And so Chairman Salazar, in UNA County, we average 7 jury trials in our district court, and I am our felony prosecutor, and so I'm not as familiar with our circuit court. I know I personally tried 2 trials in our circuit court this last year, and I believe that we usually have about 5, but that is funded, the circuit court is funded through the state. Our district court is what funds our jury trials and I will say that I know for a fact our clerk has had to go and ask for additional funding from the commissioners on some years. Last year, we had 12 jury trials. We have a lot of jury trials in UNA County. We have a lot of events on the I-80 corridor. And so certainly that is of concern to our ability to do that. However, our commissioners have always granted Ms. Wright that money. And then, if I can, Mr. Chairman, Representative Allamont, you asked about court security. I believe it was 2018, time flies when you're having fun, I've been in office since 2015, we had an actual terrifying event in UNA County. We had a circumstance where our sheriff was only able to have 1 bailiff in the building, and then we had 1 deputy that was transferring inmates. And if you've never been to UNA County, you should come see our building. It's absolutely gorgeous. We have a territorial courthouse, but in 1982, they built a structure around it, and they weren't thinking about courtroom security when they did. And so the defendants are taken down a hallway that actually goes right through my office to the courtroom. And while that deputy was trying to address 5 inmates by herself, Jonathan Oliveras hit her, disarmed her, and then for a moment took her into his custody, and then actually held 2 other citizens at gunpoint before stealing a vehicle outside of our building. So I was in the courtroom at the time, and so was our senior public defender and obviously our district court judge. We could hear the altercation occurring in the hallway, and I will never forget that day, because my choice was to run to her or to run to the other courtroom across the building to get the bailiff. I elected to run to the bailiff, and I hesitate to say that I assaulted a police officer because I hit him on the shoulder so hard. He knew that something was very wrong at that moment. And we were able to at least help that deputy. Mr. Oliveras was apprehended within about 2 hours, and he was prosecuted both locally and federally, to answer your question. Because of that event, we have done a lot in UNA County to change things, including security cameras. And our sheriff has had to make some concessions to ensure that we have more courthouse security. But it is something that is of a heightened concern when you've lived that experience yourself. So I thought I would address that question because I have personal knowledge. Does anybody have any questions?
Does the committee have any questions? Yes, Representative Pendergraft and then Representative Sherwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
You mentioned that you were authorized 4 attorneys, you just now got to 3. When you were back at 2 and the caseload became more than you could handle, how do you make up the difference?
Okay. And Mr. Chairman, Representative Pendergraft, In relation to matters, there was, when I say 2 attorneys, I should clarify that was myself and 1 deputy. And that was for a 3-year period of time. And we have, between circuit court, our Title 25s, juvenile courts, and our felonies, about 1,200 active cases at any time. So you can imagine that that was difficult. There was a point in time that I was contracting out some of the juvenile work. And so the commissioners had to pay that essentially through a different allocation. They had assigned money in the budget for me to be able to have a salary for an attorney, and so that ended up being a wash really when you come into budgeting. But the substantial portion of the problem that I've come to realize now, finally being able to fill at least one of those positions, is that we're just not competitive in our salaries. So to answer your question, I contracted when I was underwater. We have a very forgiving judge and we work very cooperatively with other counsel, but especially when you consider our trial schedule, it is very difficult.
Follow-up? Representative Sherwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my follow-up is actually, do you recall when the last time we went into statute and changed those caps, the contribution for the state for these position salaries?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Sherwood, in 2022, you all went in and changed our salary caps. However, in order to try to get the county attorneys at a competitive salary, actually it ended up being all elected officials. The caps are now, salary caps are associated with the circuit court judges, but you have not changed the contributions, I believe, since 1992. I could be wrong, but it has been since I was in high school, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been asking about AI, and I want to ask you your thoughts on AI as it affects you and your office. But we had District Attorney Hackle mention the rise in crime. She believes is generational and so societal. What I'm finding out in my county is that we're also seeing a lack of attorneys entering the field in general, and maybe AI plays into that, I don't know. But I'd like your opinion of what is the impetus for fewer attorneys or fewer people going into the pipeline to become attorneys? And obviously that affects the pay, that affects your ability to hire. So that's why I want to get to the root of what you think the reason is.
Chairman Bear, I think some of that is in relation, well, first, Southwest Wyoming is what we call a representation desert. We have approximately 1 attorney per 4,500 people the last time I counted, and I think we've had 2 attorneys retire since then. So if you are in Uintah County, Wyoming, and for example, you want an attorney to represent you on the divorce, one party runs to Longreimer, Wimmer, and Bepler. The other attorney gets to find somebody out of town because we have one law firm that handles those cases. We have 2 private attorneys that will handle criminal matters. Everybody else is either a government attorney or otherwise. As far as the attorney's circumstances, we do have an influx. Actually, I've researched this a lot, and because I've been actively recruiting from 5 states for 3 years. We have an impetus from Colorado, but we have a lot of students at our law school that are actually residents of Colorado and come to our law school, and we welcome them with open arms, but unfortunately, most of them want to go back to Colorado when they graduate from law school. And so we lose a substantial amount of our graduates for that purpose. In addition to that, quite frankly, I can't compete with Cheyenne and Natrona County for salaries or for the quality of life some people may be looking for. Uintah County is beautiful and wonderful if you like outdoor activities, such as skiing or boating or other things, but if you want to have an active social life, you have limited options. And so I think that that's similar to other smaller communities across the state. And it's weird to call Evanston a small community. I think we're the 6th largest in the state of Wyoming, and so maybe if not, we're in the top 10. And so when I think of Basin, Wyoming, and what impetus they have in order to try to recruit people, it is truly difficult. And so it does come into those salary issues, but it is not, unfortunately, just for prosecution or even for the defender program. It is attorneys in general. And so I think there has to be some incentive that we look into, similar to doctors. And there was a bill that was presented, or at least was running through the legislature a couple of years ago, to try to start a rural initiative for attorneys. Unfortunately, that didn't get much traction, but I do know that the university and the Bar Association are trying to find a way to make that work without the legislature. I think you're going to have those motivations. And being an attorney, I've been an attorney for 25 years. Stan and I started at the same time. I've spent most of that time in criminal law, although I was here in Cheyenne for 7 years. And in relation to those issues, it just really does take somebody to want to work hours that are difficult. And sometimes you don't have those. I don't want to pretend, though, we also have other, what I consider professional trades, plumbers, electricians, and other people that we also don't have people going into those trades. So I don't know how to get our youth to do that, but it is frustrating. As far as AI goes, I actually handled a case for the city of Evanston recently, and it was interesting because it was very clear that the pro se defendant was relying entirely on AI to write his 57 motions that he filed in what ended up being a zoning. It was a criminal case, but it was for a fine. But it was a zoning violation case, and so many motions and so many pleadings. And it was a good opportunity for that new attorney that I was finally able to hire, because I increased the salary I was offering by $20,000. Just so you know, but I hired him in August, and I was like, this is a great opportunity for you to really prepare for this and go through these motions and study and try to do all of these things. And he was like, I don't know where some of these citations are. And if you're not in the legal practice, for example, some of our lower courts, like here, with the judges here might have what we call an FSUP. So it's a decision from a federal court, but it's not a precedent decision that was being cited. He cited a case from Ireland and all of these other issues. And then unfortunately, I have found, and I was actually just talking, one of the third-year law students at the University of Wyoming, she won't really, I think, wants to work for LSO, so she will be great, was in my office. She's from Evanston, and her mom is my office manager, and she was talking about how they have had an increase in AI even at the law school, and how that's difficult because AI is designed to intend for you to get the answer you want. You put in a thing and it changes issues. So even when it's citing a correct case, it is not providing you necessarily the right analysis. And so that is difficult, and I think we're going to see an uptick in that and people relying on it. I also believe, I don't know this with certainty, but I believe I have the first artificial intelligence, computer-generated child sexual assault material case that we have in the state of Wyoming. And I fear that that's going to become increasingly common. And we'll see how a jury feels about that too. But luckily, when you guys created the child pornography, child exploitation, you guys were way ahead of your time, and you already anticipated computer-generated or modified images way back in the 90s. And so it's already in our statute, so.
Sherwood.
Thank you. Now that I've picked my job off the floor in terms of us not looking at this state contribution since 1992, and maybe this is a question for our staff, was this ever brought up as an interim topic? Was there traction on it? It just didn't make it across the finish line. I'm just blown away that we have gone so long without looking at salaries, knowing that we do have an attorney shortage. We are not paying competitive rates. I'm interested to know if the state is interested in having a conversation about addressing these caps.
So, Chairman, Representative Sherwood, I don't want to get too out of the box here. I will let you know that in 2022, there was a decision made. The push to change at least the salary cap did come from the County Attorneys Association. At the time, our cap on our salaries was 100,000, which is absolutely ridiculous considering some of the experience that you have in your attorney's offices. And so we were appreciative that the legislature at least raised the cap for our salaries because by statute, we couldn't make more than that. At the time, there was a decision that it may not pass to get our salaries increased if we ask you to contribute to those numbers. I will tell you that I do anticipate that there will be inquiry from the County Attorneys Association and the Wyoming County Commissioners Association to look at 183107 to address those matters, and that I'm trying to collect data, at least for some of the people that I've spoken to. There's inquiry as to what percentage of our workload actually is to be quasi-state employees, and that is something that will be relevant to your determinations as well as our budgets. But that's why it wasn't addressed in 2022. I don't know why it hadn't been addressed for the 30 years prior to that. But I can anticipate, and this is a budget year, so I don't know how well this is going to go over, but I can anticipate that there will be a budget or a proposed legislation, hopefully, that goes in front of you.
Anyone else? Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sure my punch card's about filled. I spoke to another county attorney, and she had a very similar situation to what you have. And she said there were times when she had to reach out and hire effectively contract labor at an exorbitant price. We see a similar situation sometimes in nursing and other things. In your opinion, and I'm not asking you to put a number on it, would we be able to find a sweet spot where we would end up saving money overall by paying a little bit more on a salary cap?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Pendergraft, first, just being a devil's advocate, I would say you're already saving a lot. I'm going to guess about 42 to 45 million by not having district attorneys. But that being stated, I do anticipate that if you were to modify these provisions and pay for a more substantial amount, even if it was for the legislature to say 50% or 75% or whatever percentage rather than a dollar amount, then you wouldn't have to go look at these statutes every single time to say, are we actually keeping this statute in line with this statute when you're moving them? If you did it by percentage, right now you have our salaries tied to the circuit court judge, and you've made that determination. So if you, for example, were to modify this to a percentage of that amount, which you all determined was a fair contribution, because I don't want to minimize, I certainly represent you in a county and they're elected officials, and that is part of my employment. I will say one of those, that other deputy that was with me all these years, he has never done a civil portion of anything. He has been essentially a state employee the entire time. So he only does traffic and misdemeanor cases. And so in relation to that, that's where I think it's going to be hard to find that sweet spot. But that's what I would encourage for both our deputy county attorneys and for the elected, is to agree to pay a percentage of our salaries rather than that. That could be scary for people because of the fact that you can't control what the commissioners say we get paid. But you do have control because you're the one who's setting the circuit court salaries.
We good? Anyone else? Anything else you'd like to?
No, thank you for, luckily it was a windy but dry day across I-80, and I'm going to head back to Evanston. So.
Safe travels. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it. Next, we.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the next agency for your consideration is just about to enter. They're the State Board of Equalization, Agency 211211. And before you will be the chairman, Jane Mockler. and the Vice Chairman, Martin Hardzog, and the newest board member for the Board of Equalization, Carl Anderson.
Thank you. That was my introduction.
Well, if you like, you can introduce them again.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, members of the committee. Again, I am Jane Mockler. I'm the current chairman of the State Board of Equalization, and to my left is Marty Hartzog, the vice chairman.
Good afternoon. Hello.
And to my right is Carl Anderson. Carl joined us 6 weeks ago, so I'm going to turn this over to him.
Okay, Carl. Yes.
Closer? Oh, wait, there's a pen there. All right. Oh, thank you. I thought I would just sort of give you a brief overview of our budget. It's kind of a static budget. It's not much different than it's been since 2019. In 2019, it was a little bit bigger. We went through all the COVID cuts and all of the reductions in travel. We lost all our discretionary money. So between 2019 and today, we are down in our operations budget by 40%. So we're squeaking by. And the only increase has certainly been in salaries, but we've also dropped the number of people at the board from 6 to 5. So I think it's a pretty lean machine over there. As I said, at the board, the budget supports our constitutional and our statutory responsibilities. Our constitutional role is, as the Board of Equalization, to look at the property taxes within the state of Wyoming and ensure their uniformity. And I think, Mr. Co-Chairman, you remember this, to remember that we look at the uniformity of the statewide residential and commercial properties. And then we look at, we see the mineral properties, but we don't deal with equalization of minerals or industrial. We do an appeals process where everybody who doesn't like their taxes gets to come tell us why, and that's supported through the statutory responsibilities of the job. As again, we have 5 employees on the board, the 3 board members, a statistician who does all of the number crunching for the equalization aspect of the job and has taken over as our technology guy and kind of, wearing every hat. And then we have a executive assistant who has earned her paralegal degree because the position we lost was our attorney. And the board can't speak to the plaintiffs or the parties in a case directly, so we filter everything through her. So it was good that she got her paralegal degree. Again, 97% of our budget is in salaries. The 3%, which is about $55,000, is for ETS, which is what did increase a little bit this year, but still down from 2019. And then the other is for paper, copying, contracts, dues, things like that. Let's see. We're on the first floor of the Hathaway building. We moved during the big thing from the Hirschler after 35 years to the Hathaway building. We have an exception request. We increased the board's salaries in July, in part to get it up to market of what was the salary for that position, but also because when Dave Delacath left the board, he gave the governor notice in the end of February, and it took until October to find Carl. So we went almost 9 months with just the 2 board members, and part of that is the salary issue, that it was just a little bit low. So the governor raised it in July, and the exception request simply carries that increase over into the next biennium. And that's pretty much our entire budget.
So let me ask you, this goes to process and what you actually do. So you hear appeals from the county that are appealed again to you, or how does that work?
We hear appeals of County Board of Equalization decisions. Right. And so in that respect, we're an appellate court. We simply review the record that the local county board has put together. And then if you disagree with us, you go back to your own district court in your community. On the other, we're directly trial court for decisions from the Department of Revenue, final decisions that are appealed from the Department of Revenue and the Department of Transportation's Fuel Division and the Liquor Division. So those are trials that we actually hold, but the appeal process coming from the counties is after the county board hearing.
So are there figures out there as to the percentage of times that you have overturned the lower decision on an appeal that reaches you?
I'm sure, I don't think we could track it quite like that, but we could probably do that. We send a lot of them back to the counties simply because, and I think, anyone that's listened to the Revenue Committee will find, some counties have never, ever have appeals. And then when they get one, they don't do it right. And so they'll get sent back on procedural issues. Some counties, just get overwhelmed and just kind of send through a formula decision, and we send those back. So it's not necessarily that the taxpayer's winning, it's that the board didn't do it correctly. But we don't track exactly which party wins. You can win.
You can?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I know in my county, I hear about it.
Yeah.
So just curious about the success rate of those who want to continue the process. But okay. Yes, Mr. Co-Chair.
Before I get to my question, I'll just share with you that I had a bill that was based on their committee overturning my county's board. So they made the right choice. We put it into statute, and so now all the counties understand. So I do appreciate your work. Mr. Hartzell, you and I have had some pretty frank discussions about exemptions, and since you're here today, I just kind of wanted to revisit that. And we have now had a few months with the 25% property tax exemption. We've had over a year with the property tax cap as an exemption. You were very concerned when I was in revenue and you were before us, and I really wanted to know your thoughts on how these exemptions were going to impact. At the time, you felt like it was not going to be good as far as keeping things fair and equal. As we've moved a year down the road or more, how do you feel about that today?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chair, we still have serious concerns, especially about the cap. We've been looking at 2 years now of data, and what we were concerned would happen is happening, so we still are concerned.
Have you had any complaints at this point that have come before your board based on the equalization, based on those factors?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chair, actually, we had a case recently, and the litigant from Natrona specified that a house right down the street was worth quite a bit more than her home, and yet the taxes were lower. And we were not able from the record to understand why that was, but that's in fact what was going on. So we went behind the scenes and were able to figure out that the cap had indeed completely put the two properties in kind of an absurd position in terms of tax liability. And so the complaint that she had was, why was this other property, which was worth more, being taxed at a lower level than my house? And of course, her complaint was that the assessor was getting it wrong, but in fact, the cap exemption was playing a role in that. And that's one of the problems with the cap exemption in particular. The 25% exemption is pretty easy to understand. Whatever your liability is 25%. It doesn't tamper with the value itself. But the cap does a few things in terms of the steps that you take when the cap is basically removed, that then, as we predicted, throws off the values across the spectrum where you get some results that don't quite make sense on a uniformity standpoint. So the problem, the predicate of your question is how would somebody really know? They wouldn't be able to look at the information that we have through the CAMA system and look at a whole neighborhood and understand how it's working, but she stumbled on it through her diligence just by going to the system and pulling values and pulling assessed values, and was able to identify kind of a quirk, and it was the cap that was doing it.
Please.
So that begs the question, what did your board do about that once you discovered that behind the scenes, that was what was causing the issue?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chair, on the merits of her appeal, we affirmed we overturned it, but we affirmed what the assessor did, because her complaint about why the value was the way it was invalid. She didn't present evidence, and quite frankly, the board just said, we don't like the result, just do it again, but didn't explain why. And we have been warned by the Wyoming Supreme Court to not do that, and not, to make sure that county boards back up what they're doing with some kind of analysis, which it did not do. So in that instance, we did affirm the county assessor, but overruled the board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last question, really. If a taxpayer found that this was hurting them and they wanted to bring it to the courts, if you will, would they go through your board first to make that determination? If they were challenging, the legality of the cap?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chair, they could do that any number of ways. They could go straight to district court and file what's called a declaratory judgment action, suing the state and claiming that the law violated whatever parameters, constitutional parameters, or they could proceed through us to try to build a record at an admin level. And that could be done either through a county board process. They could ask us for an investigation. We have investigatory authority, which is kind of an anachronism from our territorial days. It's in there. Not very many people know it. But every now and then we get requests for what's called an examination, and we have broad authority to examine and investigate illegal taxes, any problems with an assessment. So it could go any number of ways, directly to district court or through this board and then up to district court. Even could go through this board and then be certified directly to the Wyoming Supreme Court through the district court if it were determined that it's going to get there anyway, which is often how some of the complicated tax cases go. The district court doesn't always go through and have a fully developed proceeding if they believe and the parties believe that it's going to get up to the Wyoming Supreme Court either way. As long as there's a record that's in place, then the Supreme Court can take it from there. But any number of ways.
Thank you.
Other questions? Any other questions? Okay. Anything else you'd like to share?
Absolutely not, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Glad you didn't have a long day.
Mr. Richards, I'll hand it over to you.
Yes, for the public's notice, you will be commencing at 8 a.m. tomorrow, as opposed to the previously published agenda of 7:30 a.m. Primarily, the morning is taken up by ETS and TRP, that's the Technology Replacement Program, as well as the Enterprise Technology Services Agency. The afternoon is comprised of the Department of Administration and Information, as well as dozens of supported and unsupported boards. While we expect all of the boards to be present or have a representative on their behalf present, I believe there's only a handful that actually have exception requests that you may wish to ask questions of.
Okay. Good. Well, with that, we will adjourn until 8 a.m. tomorrow morning then.